Men are drawn to borderline personality traits in physically attractive women. This instability might be exciting in terms of sensation seeking and being impulsive. The data does not say that men are drawn to BPD high women. That would suggest men are more willing to engage with BPD high than BPD low women, which is not the case. Both men and women preferred mates lower on the BPD scale for the same wealth/attractiveness. The report is of relative differences between men and women, in which men were more willing to engage with BPD high women than women were willing to engage with BPD high men. Is this more willingness to engage in a relationship or bad foresight, like how many who are willing would actually tolerate or make the same mistake twice? I guess it's sort of the same but a slightly different tone. Also, how much of women's unwillingness to date turbulent individuals is from a fear of safety that fewer men probably have an equivalent of? Overlook the warning signs due to attractiveness. People with BPD love bomb partners at the start of the relationship. They are attentive, loving, passionate, confident, and happy to pursue and to show interest. People like this. This is probably why men prefer attractive women with this mental illness. Very few men would be immune to the charms of an attractive woman who shows passionate interest in them. The problems start when they feel secure and their attachment issues and fragile egos kick in. I know this is pedantic, but someone with BPD doesn't ever really feel secure in a relationship. Frantic efforts to avoid real or imagined abandonment is a hallmark feature. I have fear of abandonment, due to abandonment trauma. I don't do this love bomb thing though. I'm just slow to warm up and vigilant for signs of imminent abandonment. It's like, if I trust someone enough to think they won't easily abandon me, then the carefree side can come out. I don't know if this is the same thing. It's more like I just assume I'm not good enough all the time, and hope someone sees past it. I think I'm actually vulnerable to the personality type described, but I'm a woman. Also, my diagnosis is PTSD, social anxiety, and depression. No doctor has even whispered BPD around me. There's a pretty vocal subset of psychologists who want to reclassify BPD as a trauma disorder or subtype of PTSD because it is almost always born from severe childhood trauma. The hallmarks of BPD are emotional dysregulation, chronic feelings of emptiness, and intense fear of abandonment. You can imagine that might get hairy. Also, people with BPD don't always love bomb. I'd argue they, more often than not, are genuine in their initial attentions. People with BPD feel everything much more viscerally than other people, so when they fall hard. They desperately try to create closeness because they struggle with being alone. You don't sound like you have anything like BPD, and it's worth noting that fearing abandonment is very common, especially with trauma disorders. I didn't realize that, but my partner has BPD and it's not even a little questionable that it's a result of childhood trauma, so at least anecdotally, that makes a great deal of sense to me. I also dated someone with BPD and they were not at all malicious or intentionally cruel. It appeared to me to be another flavor of PTSD, which can be managed or not. But I know my ex's pain and affection were both very genuine. I think there's a difference between being carefree and having BPD. If your carefreeness starts infringing on the other person, it's when you worry, but you're worrying before it's happening, so I think it's fair to assume you have the awareness to avoid that type of situation. On top of that, it sounds like you've seen psychologists, and if they haven't mentioned it, it probably means you're fine, smiley face. People often unconsciously select for attributes they find attractive at a superficial level. At some point you realize that the psychological makeup that produces those attractive behaviors may also produce unattractive behaviors. Cf. the alpha male whose confidence makes them attractive but also underlies a domineering and controlling disposition, or the hot mess woman whose lack of inhibitions makes them attractive but also underlies a narcissistic and unpredictable disposition. I think it's less about ignoring the warning signs and more about not realizing the connection between the good and bad behavior. People with BPD are seductive in general. They typically crave attachment, so seem very emotionally available. They also frequently idealize new partners, making you feel that you finally found someone who truly appreciates you, and they also mirror you, becoming just the sort of person you want them to be. So they seem very attractive as partners initially, but eventually it all comes crashing down once the idealization and mirroring not only stops, but does a 180. Where before you could do no wrong, increasingly it seems you can do no right. Where before they relished being your dream partner, increasingly they feel engulfed by you and that their own identity is at risk, making them resentful or distant. They start to change their identity completely and you feel that you barely recognize them, and they grow increasingly venomous towards you. No two people with BPD are the same, and this is a vast simplification of the disorder. But I'm not surprised that women in general might be more guarded by some of the traits that men find appealing. I've been there, twice. I maintain a list of resources that were most helpful for me. If you're grieving from or currently in a relationship with someone who has BPD and would like a copy, send me a PM with an email address and I'll share. Edit. My thanks to the many people who reached out to share their personal stories with BPD. I am trying to respond to all of you, but with over 100 requests for resources, and dozens not providing an email address, I decided to host this information on a Google Doc. BPD Resources for Understanding and Recovery. Please feel free to comment with suggestions to improve the resource. Are we sure they're not just overlooking these personality traits if the woman is attractive enough? That's what the study found. It's not that men prefer those women, it's just that they are willing to overlook these shortcomings given that they are hot. The hot/crazy scale in action. This kinda gives the hot/crazy scale more of a basis. I've always felt it's somewhat of a selection bias thing. Extremely attractive women with stable personalities basically get their pick of the litter, so the typical guy often only ever gets to date an extremely attractive woman if she has some personality flaws. I'm not sure that is a dismissal of the scale. The way I have always envisioned it is that the crazy hot scale isn't a dependent function, crazy equals hot, rather it is a function of dateability. Meaning that someone is deemed dateable when their level of crazy appropriately corresponds to their hotness. So that there is an arbitrary positive XY line function, with hotness on one axis and crazy on the other. So long as a data point falls below this line, they are in the go zone as far as dateability is concerned. Their pick of the litter. And even then it's not a sure thing. I have plenty of smoking hot friends that date ordinary looking guys because they 1, are kind, and 2, they make them laugh. Also look at Olivia Wilde and Emily Blunt. If you have a stable personality and are hot, the pick of the litter isn't always what people think it is. It's weird that Sudeikis and Krasinski are usually brought up when men dating out of their league is mentioned. Like they aren't way above average looking, funny and successful themselves. How many male supermodels with personality are available? That's quite sad actually. I know it's naive to think people don't value appearance so highly, but it would be nice if personality and a person's general life goals mattered more to people. Especially the life goals part. Too often you find couples who want completely different things in life. It's not that these men prioritize appearance over personality. It's that the opportunity to be with someone extremely attractive outweighs the danger of their behavior, and that some of that behavior produces desirable outcomes. Put another way, this woman is so far out of my league, and yet she still wants me? Hell yes, I'm going to ignore some of these red flags because the rest of her is awesome. Rest of her. Meaning she's hot, so even if she burns my house down, at least she's hot. I want to add that while BPD can make a relationship more difficult, that doesn't by any means say that those with BPD can't have healthy, fulfilling relationships.